And so the 24-hour rule was something that we talked about with our players all the time. And it's something that we adopted as a business and as a family, which is no matter whether you win or lose, you got 24 hours to process the feeling behind that. Like it's ridiculous to think that we're non-humans that don't have emotions and feelings. So I think it's really critical for us as people to go, it's okay for me to feel disappointment. It's okay for me to feel excitement. It's okay for me to celebrate that. It's okay for me to wallow in it. It's okay for me to do what I need to do to process and really feel my emotions. But I have to be able to separate my emotions from everything that happens after that. Because all of the behavior after that is going to determine whether or not I sustain success or whether or not I overcome the adversity to get to success.
You are listening to the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast, transforming athletes into leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Coaches, are you ready to take your passion for coaching and turn it into a full-time career? I know the challenges firsthand, but the Make Money Coaching Sports program helped me take BTG basketball full-time. If you're tired of juggling coaching part-time and want to fully focus on doing what you love, this business accelerator will give you the tools and support to make it happen. Hit the link in the show notes below to learn more and start living your dream. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. I'm really excited here. I got a great guest for us today, Marc Nudelberg. Marc is a TEDx speaker and an award-winning leadership and sales coach and former NCAA Division I football coach. Marc is an expert in building high-performing teams. He works with individuals and organizations specializing in leadership development and modern sales strategies. Marc's high-energy approach focuses on mindset, action, and creating repeatable processes that drive success. And I'm excited to bring all that wisdom to you all today. So welcome to the show, Marc.
Thank you for having me, Justin. It's an honor to be here, and it's always good when I get to have conversations with another coach.
Absolutely. It always brings me so much energy, and I want to start with that right there, is talking about, you can feel it, right? There's an energy and a presence that you have even through a screen. So can you talk about, is that something that you have developed over the years? Is that something that comes naturally to you? Because I know that's an important part of leadership.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of nature and a little bit of nurture, right? Like it sort of runs in the genes in the Nudelberg family. Like we kind of have that juice. My dad had it my whole life. My grandfather had it. But I also think it's a byproduct of kind of what they did habitually in terms of taking care of themselves and how they fed themselves to grow over time. So it's a little bit of both, right? And I remember when I first got into my coaching, I remember being in Pee Wee football and not being afraid to like step in front of the team and say something. So like I've always kind of had that energy and that juice, but then understanding how to really leverage that and how to maintain it. I think that's the most important thing, is that like, it's one thing to have like everything going your way on a day and you feel that juice and like you're able to deliver that. But then when that's your standard, or that's what the expectation is, whether you're leading a team meeting, whether you're stepping in front of the team before a game, whether it's just a Tuesday practice and you got to get people going because you know you got to get the team to meet a standard, when you know you have to deliver that all the time, it becomes your responsibility to figure out how to get yourself there all the time. And so whether it's what you eat, whether it's getting up in the morning and having a morning routine, whether it's the physical movement you do to take care of your body, you have to define the things that work for you, listening to music, reading a book, whatever it is that gets you to that place that allows you to deliver that consistently.
And I'd love to dive into that a little bit more. And first, I'm going to ask about, and kind of go back to what you kind of first talked about your dad and your grandpa, about what are some early like leadership lessons that you remember from when you were young that you feel like really had a defining moment on, okay, this is leadership?
It's interesting that you say that, because I think it wasn't necessary. Well, it's leadership, but it's like self-leadership, right? And I think when we teach leadership, we always teach people like you got to be able to lead yourself before you can lead anybody else. So what does it mean to lead yourself? And it's the very first chapter in my book, which is do the frickin' work, right? And the frickin' is probably a different F word as I grew up because we kind of had that loose language in my family. But they were a prime example of showing up consistently and getting the job done no matter what the job was, right? No matter how they felt, no matter how difficult it was, growing up in an entrepreneurial family, they were responsible for the business that they had created. And so I got to see that as a kid growing up my entire life. So the concept of just doing it no matter what, like whether it's Nike's slogan, just do it, whether it's the slogan that I used to use with my players all the time, doesn't matter, get better, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons to make an excuse on why you can't show up or why the job can't get done. Both my grandfather and my father were never examples of that and always just showed up no matter what needed to happen. And so I think that laid a really strong foundation for me that the consistency had to be there as a non-negotiable.
Consistency is a word you've already said a couple of times, and I want to continue on with this in terms of separating yourself. You started as a college coach, and now you're in the entrepreneurial space. I feel like consistency is like one of the number one ways to separate yourself. And you're talking about doing the work, and I feel like there's so many things on social media that we see, like 4 steps to get there fast, to get there fast,
Right.
to get there fast, and it's like consistent work over time has been the secret to success forever. So can you talk about how that has kind of carried with you?
Well, it's interesting because, like, I think for me in my football career, I became a special teams coordinator at the University of Cincinnati at 26. That's fast in most people's eyes.
Right.
And I was the youngest coordinator in all of major Division I college football. So some people would say, oh, you got there really fast. But what they didn't see was those 7 years prior to that,
Right.
from the time of me being 21 to the time of, or me being 20 to the time of me being 27, that I was in the office when nobody else was. And when coaches went on vacation during the summer, I didn't leave so I could stay and house sit and take care of their pets and do things. So like I sacrificed a lot in my early 20s to put myself in position to have that happen at fast, right? And so I think there's no shortcut. There's really not, right? Now, I could sacrifice more than you that might get me there faster than you,
Right.
but it's still not fast. It still took me 7 years, right? And if at 18, you would have told me, hey, I can guarantee you this job at 26 or 27, but you have to be willing to do all of these things. You sign up for that no-brainer. Like, yeah, absolutely. The difficult part is that there's no guarantee. You don't know. So you have to trust the process and trust life and trust God and have faith that if you do the right thing time and time again, it will help you. Might not be exactly what you have envisioned, but it will get you the thing that you're looking for somehow, some way.
100%. And yeah, fast doesn't necessarily mean fast in terms of like years. As far as fast goes, you got to put in the time, right? I'm in a similar situation where I'm 27 now. Fully supporting myself as an entrepreneur here in Los Angeles with a club basketball program, but they didn't see like starting at 20 years old, I started with a blog and like I was starting to do things, and I skipped going out, and like I was coaching, a youth basketball team, and I still remember I had a game at like 9 a.m. in the morning the next day, and it was a Friday night in college, and I didn't go out, right? So there are certain things, right, where you're like, you're 27, you're young, but again, like it's been a long time since we've been putting in the work to get to where we want to go.
Like I got my full-time job, right, at Florida State when I graduated, and I was 22. And I had worked for, a long time there. I worked there for 4 years prior, started as an equipment manager, worked my way up to a volunteer student assistant coach, and then got hired full-time when I graduated. When everybody was graduating, everybody was getting jobs for like 50, 60, 70 grand base salary, and they were going to go into sales jobs and make all these commissions. And when I got offered the job at Florida State, number one, I was just happy to get offered the job. Number two, then I found out like I was actually going to get paid for it. I was like, this is incredible. I've been doing this for free for years. You're actually going to pay me to do it now. Then I found out it was $13,000. And I was like, cool, like great. I was making nothing before, but like if I would have played the comparison game and been like, oh man, look at how much money everybody else is making, and look at the trips they're going on, and oh, they're getting married now, and all these things are happening. I wasn't doing any of those things. I was in the film room studying. I was honing my craft to be a special teams coordinator, and I was laying the foundation for what would allow me to become a special teams coordinator at 26. But you don't necessarily know that in the moment, right? So it's the same thing as when you recruit, I don't even know what they call them now, but let's call it used to be the ESPN Top 100, right? Or the Rivals Top 100, these nationally recognized recruits that now are getting a couple $100,000 or a couple $1 million to come play at school. You got to remember that when you show up on campus at 18, there are dudes who were already where you were 3-4 years ago that have been in the weight program, that have learned the system, that are light years ahead of where you are. And you're going to have to take some humble pie at that point, right? And you got to understand that, like, okay, I got to really commit to learning and growing right now. And if it comes earlier, great. But if I'm not going to get it for another 3-4 years, that's still fine, because I know I'm going to be light years ahead of all the other people who aren't willing to do that and are going to go chase the dollars at all these other schools now.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating part of college athletics now. And I'd love for you to kind of expand more on it because, I'm in the high school world and I even see it here, right? Like for me in the club basketball space, like club basketball programs aren't necessarily paying athletes to come to their program. But in some ways, right, we'll market you, we'll give you this discount and that. And like that's always been going on, of course. But I say that to say there's less like, I guess, loyalty in terms of like, if something's going on, I'm the eighth man on the team. I'm just going to go switch teams, right? Instead of wanting to work your way to get more play time, right? Oh, I'll just go over there. Can we kind of talk about how the landscape of college sports has changed?
Yeah, we're crippling an entire generation of people because they are losing the ability to overcome adversity. Like I'll tell you, one of the greatest lessons in my life was getting fired at 26 from the University of Cincinnati. And we were ranked really high in special teams that year nationally. I recruited a couple kids out of the state of Florida. I thought, for being a 26-year-old coordinator and the first time in the role, I thought I crushed it, right? And so when I got fired in the offseason, I was like, man, what happened here? And I went and had to have a real conversation with the head coach about what I could have done better, and found out that really it was just part of the business, had nothing to do with the way I performed, but I was let go still. I was gone. So like having to overcome that adversity and having to deal with the internal feelings and emotions of failure and inadequacy and all of the things that come along with being told you're not good enough, and then having to overcome that and go get another job and prove that I could do it again and still build my career for another 5 years after that, that built resiliency in me. That built courage, that built confidence, that built all the things that equip me to be an entrepreneur now. And so the fact that we are allowing kids to run away from adversity because they're not getting the playing time they think they deserve, or because they're not getting the money they think they deserve, and we're just allowing them to move and go around obstacles instead of having to move through the difficulty of them, we're not helping ourselves in terms of developing leaders and developing a generation of people that are going to help us as a society or a civilization.
Yeah, that is spot on right there. And it's it's beyond the game basketball. Our goal is to prepare all these athletes that are part of our program beyond the game. And so what you're talking about, and that's originally, what percent of college football players play in the NFL?
Right? This is like less than 1%.
Right.
Like that's the reality of being number one. Less than 1% of high school athletes go on to play major Division I football, right?
Right.
Division I, period. So like you talk about the percentages upon percentages that go from high school to college, then to the NFL, and the things that separate them are really simple, right? It's discipline to doing what needs to be done. And discipline just means saying, I don't care about how I feel, I'm going to do it anyway, right? So the discipline to do it, which then creates the consistency of showing up more days than not. Those are the two things that every professional has to have. They're non-negotiable, right? You don't actually have to be the most talented. Like did you see TJ McConnell on the Old Man and the Three podcast?
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
him talking about I had to do something that nobody else was willing to do in order to make it in this league. I'm going to pick up full court and I'm going to be the most well-conditioned person to be able to do that all the time. He's making a career for himself, not on his talent, on a skill set that nobody else is willing to do and giving more effort at that skill set than everybody else. Right. So, like, I think people really get enamored with the glamour of skill and whether it's the catches or the throws or the shots or the dunks, and they don't realize that everybody at the NBA level, particularly ones or NFL level or whatever, the ones that are going to make it and sustain a career are the ones that are the most disciplined and the most consistent, not the most talented.
100%. You see it all the time with a lot of guys that are super talented in high school, and then they flame out. Maybe they make the NBA or the NFL, but if you don't have that certain work ethic, right, it's just not going to last. You may have a couple years of success, but not a longevity and not a full career. And so I know you have a 4-step process of how to handle and navigate failure, and I'd love to learn more about it.
Yeah, so I learned this in football, right? And I think, Nick Saban talked about it, and I had worked with a lot of coaches that had come from the Nick Saban program. And so the 24-hour rule was something that we talked about with our players all the time, and it's something that we adopted as a business and as a family, which is no matter whether you win or lose, you got 24 hours to process the feeling behind that. Like it's ridiculous to think that we're non-humans that don't have emotions and feelings. So I think it's really critical for us as people to go, it's okay for me to feel disappointment. It's okay for me to feel excitement. It's okay for me to celebrate that. It's okay for me to wallow in it. It's okay for me to do what I need to do to process and really feel my emotions. But I have to be able to separate my emotions from everything that happens after that, because all of the behavior after that is going to determine whether or not I sustain success or whether or not I overcome the adversity to get to success. So the very first step is a 24-hour rule to really feel what's happening. The next thing, which as a coach, is review what happened. Right. And it's easy in sports because we usually have it on video footage so we can go back and actually watch it and dissect it. In our lives, it's a lot harder to do that. We got to go back. We got to ask people, hey, why didn't I get that deal? Or why didn't I get that promotion? Or why did you break up with me? Or why didn't we have, an argument? You got to be willing to get that feedback from people and take it honestly, right? Like not just excuse it away, not rationalize it away. You got to give an honest review, both for yourself and from other people, about what happened, to then say, okay, I can identify the mistake that was made. And if I can do that, then I can move on to the next step, which is creating a plan to avoid that mistake in the future. So if I can feel it and process my emotions, I can get an honest review to identify mistakes, and then I can build a plan to avoid those mistakes again. The 4th step is really simple, which is just trying again. And the more you overcome that, obstacle, that adversity, that failure, the more you do that, the more you build courage to do it again, the more you build confidence in your ability to do it, which ultimately leads to resilience and your ability to overcome adversity over and over and over, which is the number one skill set to becoming successful at a very high level. So I try to, for me, This stems from my football career as a special teams coordinator. I always wanted everything to be simple and effective. I don't want to overcomplicate how to overcome adversity. It's pretty simple. Feel it, review it, plan it, try it again. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and do that over and over and over. And the more times you fail, the higher the likelihood that you will become successful if you're able to do that in a really rapid pace.
1,000%. And I mean, that's true across all boards and all industries, right? The adaptable companies, they win because they're resilient, right? They fail, they learn what the people want, they iterate, and then they make a new product. Oh, the people didn't like the product. Okay, let's figure out how to make a more effective, service for whatever it is, right?
Yep.
And when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a coach, right? What's most effective? Last night we had practice, we're preparing for our tournament in Las Vegas, and I'm like thinking to myself after, like, reviewing, how can I be more effective? Like, I think I had too many things that I was focusing on because practice
Yep.
is so short in AAU. So it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
really just need to figure out one thing that we're going to get really good at. And I
Yep.
have to live with it, right? And if we
Mm-hmm.
fail, right, like you're talking about, then we're going to have to review in the game. Okay, this is what we need to do in the next practice. Like, those games are such good opportunities to create feedback.
So I think that concept is true not only for sport, but for business and anywhere, right? The companies that try to focus on a million products do nothing well, right?
Yeah,
The teams that try to run a million plays do nothing well, right? They do
right.
all of them average or good, but they're not great at anything. My philosophy was always, if we could run one play, but that play could have an answer to absolutely everything you're going to do to us, were impossible to stop at that point. So I really wanted to focus on saying, hey guys, I don't want to run 100 things. Maybe we're going to run 3 things, but we're going to know every variation to those things that allow us to adapt so that we can be so good at it that we can stand on the 50-yard line and tell the kickoff team, this is what we're running, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I think as a business, sometimes, the finality and the specificity of sport doesn't necessarily translate, but I do think it's possible to say, hey, we're going to be really good at this one thing that we do, and we're going to find all the people in the world that need that one thing, and that's going to make you way more successful than trying to say, hey, we're going to try to do something that fits everybody in the world, because you never get good at it.
Right, exactly. So for me and my business, we're club, camps, training, right? But we
Right.
could do after school programs and
Right.
this and
Right.
that, like you can really add it up. It's like,
Yep.
and I feel like that might be sometimes one of the challenges as a leader. And even in this day and age, it feels like, oh, I could be doing this and like chase all these different
Yep.
shiny objects. When in reality, you got to have your standards and you got to stick to your standards.
Amen. Like we could teach marketing at On the Ball. We could be a marketing consultant. We do it for ourselves. We could help people develop their own podcast because we have
Right,
our own. Like, there's a zillion things we can do.
right.
We focus on sales and leadership. And we do that through individual coaching, group coaching, keynotes and training. That's it. Right? We have a couple different ways that you can execute that, whether it's in person or virtually, and there's some variations. That's our menu, and we're going to execute that as high of a level as possible. And so I think everybody, whether you're an individual, whether you're a business, you got to understand what are the things you do well and double down on those things. Like, for instance, Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady didn't try to become a running quarterback because he knew that wasn't his strength. He knew he had to be mobile enough to move around the pocket, so he had to do enough to develop that skill set. But he was never going to say, "Hey, I want to be like Lamar Jackson." Didn't
Right.
fit who he was. He knew what he could do well. He could be smarter. He could be more accurate. He could have better velocity. He worked on those things because those were the things he could own that could take him to another level as opposed to a different style quarterback.
Right. And yeah, that's where it comes to self-awareness and understanding your strengths. And then that's where, as a team leader, right, and when you're a football coach, it's a little bit different between high school and college, because college you get to kind of recruit the
Sure.
style of play. High school, it's a little bit more, you have to be adaptable to the kids that come into your door, unless you're at a private school and you can
No doubt.
recruit like college, but that's a little
No
bit
doubt.
different.
Yep.
So understanding and then just focusing on those 3 to 4 things and execute them at a high level.
Bingo.
One of the things I wanted to talk about and bring back that you were talking about at the beginning of the podcast is we're talking about leadership right now. And you were talking about, leaders need to do basically what they needed to do to perform at a high level. Can
Yep.
you talk about how you break down that process for the people you work with?
Yeah, so again, everything we try to do, we try to keep it simple, right? And so when we look at leaders, right, as individuals, what do I need to do to execute at a high level? Number one, it's controlling the controllable, right? Which is what I choose to focus on and what I choose to do. And I say choose for both of those things because we have to recognize as leaders that we have a choice in everything we do. And we're never the victim, right? We have an extreme ownership mentality that we take responsibility for everything that happens to us and around us. And so if I as a leader can cultivate a growth mindset, which means I believe in my ability to grow and develop along with the people around me. I have extreme ownership, meaning I take responsibility for what I do and what happens around me. And I have self-awareness to understand how I land to other people. That's the key to the mindset part of it, right? Then when it comes to the behavior, it's really just 3 behaviors that we're focusing on. It's as an individual who needs to lead myself. It's management of my time, it's management of my relationships, and it's how well I communicate. Those are the 3 things that I can be responsible for that allow me to operate at a higher level, whether I have a team or not. Right now, when you talk about leading other people, then you need to develop the coaching skill sets. Then you need to develop the strategic thinking skill sets. But in order for me to lead myself at a high level, I got to manage my mind. I got to manage my time. I got to manage my relationships, and I got to be an expert communicator. If I can do those 4 things really well, it's nearly impossible to fail.
100%. So, could you kind of walk us through your process and how you approach that every day?
Yeah, so like for me, the mindset part of it comes from reading and writing. So I do it every day, right? And now I kind of like cheat the reading part of it because a lot of it I'll just listen to now, whether I'm
Yeah.
listening to a podcast or I'm listening to an affirmation or I'm listening to a book, right? But I'm feeding myself knowledge to continue to learn and grow. And then I'm writing, whether I'm journaling what's happening to me, whether I'm writing and posting on LinkedIn every day, whatever I'm doing, I'm using the skill sets to strengthen my mind, to feed it information, and then actually regurgitate it back out and create that in and out for myself of information. That's how I cultivate my mindset. I spend time in quiet time while I'm walking the dog, thinking, recognizing my thoughts and being like, where are you? Why are you so scattered and all over the place right now? What do you really need to be focused on? Controlling that inner dialogue when I start to get some of that negative self-talk or start to get some of that fear and doubt that we all get as human beings. I'm aware of it. I'm not ignoring it, but I'm also not feeding it. I'm saying, hey, I'm not going to choose to listen to that. I'm going to go ahead and change the narrative for myself. So starts by doing that in the morning every single day with my mindset. And then I got to get physical, right? Whether I'm running a couple miles, whether I'm lifting weights, I'm doing something to break a sweat and get my body going. And I do that every single day. Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday count as days. I'm doing that every single day. So I'm taking care of myself first, nonstop. Now, I'm relatively maniacal when it comes to my time management. So I like to operate in 15-minute boxes. I like to have everything scheduled for myself. So whether it's Sunday night and I'm looking at the week ahead, or it's the end of every day and I'm looking at the next day's calendar, I'm constantly making sure that I have enough time in between meetings to transition, having my priorities scheduled for myself so I can focus on the things that matter and not on the things that don't actually move the needle for us. And so that's how I manage my mind and my time, right? And then on my calendar, you're going to see on there, walk the dog. You're going to see on there, get the family out the door. You're going to see on there, bath time. You're going to see the things that I know as a parent and as a husband I have to do and be present for, so that when things pop up, whether it's a speaking engagement, whether it's travel for work, whether it's a networking event, whatever it is, I have something to weigh it against, right? I know the thing I'm supposed to do in that moment, and I can say, well, is this thing more important than that for that moment, right? Because I think that's what people don't get about time management, is that it's not set it and forget it, right? It is, you got to be managing it every day, because our priorities are constantly fluctuating in how much each priority is important to us. And so my time should reflect that. My family is more important in the moment. That's what should be reflected on my calendar. If business is more important in the moment, that should be what's reflected on my calendar. So having a morning routine that allows me to take care of myself, having great calendar management that allows me to manage the time, is really the foundation of everything that happens on top of that.
100%. And that time management is really, like you're talking about, it's priority management, right? Obviously, you have to work, right? That is, you're providing the finances, whatever you may say, right? If you have a family, that's a priority. And how you spend your time, whether it's scrolling, like I guess scrolling's a priority to you, or a lot of people are just kind of going through life, like letting things dictate their priorities instead of dictating the priorities for themselves.
So there's a great visual for that, right? Like if you use your calendar and open your calendar, 99% of people, the only thing that's on their calendar are other people's meetings, right?
Right.
Not meetings with themselves, only meetings with other people. And so if you look at your calendar and you go, okay, well, the only thing that's actually scheduled for me is what other people need from me, and there's nothing else scheduled, you are now allowing distraction and interruption and other people to dictate all of the other time for yourself. So if you're willing to sit down and go, what's really important to me, and focus on the top 3 to 5 things that are most important to you, and go, okay, well, what are the things that I need to do in order to feed those priorities, and put them on your calendar. Now you schedule time with yourself, for yourself, that if somebody goes, hey, do you have 5 minutes for me? You could actually look at your calendar and go, you know what? I don't. I actually said I needed to do this thing in this window. I'm going to do that. But here's when I do have 5 minutes for you. And that's how you really operate as a high performer, and focus on the things that you know you need to do. And then it's not about how you feel anymore. You don't wake up on Monday morning and go, oh, you know what? I don't really feel like doing that thing, or I know I need to, but I could probably do it later. You look at your calendar, you go, no, this is when I said I was going to do it, and everything else on here needs to get done. I'm going to do it now.
And then having the discipline to follow through and sticking through to it is
Bingo.
That's the real separator. So
Right.
I love that. And self-leadership is where it starts. So and that's something that I teach to our athletes. And now kind of going into the fourth quarter of our podcast, I'd love for you to kind of talk about the leadership of people, right? What are some of the leadership of people skills that you're teaching to your clients?
Yeah, so I would say, coaching as a skill set in itself, right, is based on those 4 fundamentals. So if I've got mindset, time management, relationship management, and communication mastered, then I can start figuring out how to coach people. And I think the very first thing that people need to do when they step in to a new leadership role is, assuming that you've already got the relationships with the people, is then set expectations, right? The trauma happens when consequences are delivered unexpectedly. So if as a leader, I can set very clear expectations, not only of what I expect of you, but of what you can expect for me, now there's real transparency, and there's clear guidelines around what everybody should be doing and what you're going to be doing and how it should be happening. So that when I set those clear expectations, and then those expectations are not met, it's simple for me to have the conversation about accountability. Because it's not, hey, how come you're not doing this thing? Or I told you to do this thing. It's, hey, we agreed that this was the expectation we were going to hold ourselves to. This was the standard that we were expected to meet. How come we're not meeting it? Because I think that as a leader and a coach for other people, you only operate in 3 areas. You either provide resources to help them overcome challenges, you remove obstacles to help them overcome and continue to execute, or you provide opportunities for them to do it themselves. That's it. So every time I'm dealing with a teammate, or I'm dealing with somebody on our team, or I'm dealing with a client of ours, I'm looking at, do I need to remove an obstacle for you? Do I need to provide a resource for you? Or do I need to create an opportunity for you to do it yourself? And everything is in that lane for me. So it's really simple, right? I'm not thinking about, oh, there's a million things I need to do for you, and it keeps me from getting in the weeds with them. Because the worst thing we can do as leaders is actually do it for them, which, as a ball coach, you can't. I can't do it for you on Saturday. I can't do it for you in practice. I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to teach it to you in the classroom. I'm going to show it to you in a walkthrough. I'm going to show it to you as I give you an example of me doing it on the court or on the field. But now you got to do it, right? And I'm going to help you do it through as much feedback as I possibly can. But that's it. And so as a leader, if I'm staying focused on, do I need to provide a resource? Do I need to remove an obstacle? Or do I need to create an opportunity? That's a simple framework for me to go, okay, set expectations, hold people accountable. When problems arise, put them through these 3 areas. And then I would say the last thing would be, how short is the feedback loop? In athletics, it's nearly instantaneous. You practice something, coach gives you feedback on it as soon as you do it. Then you go back into the classroom, you watch it again on tape, you get more feedback on it. In business, most people are getting feedback at best once a week. So as a leader, how do I create the visibility to work for myself so that I can give feedback daily, every other day, a couple times a week, but more than once a week? Because the shorter the feedback loop is, the faster the development can happen.
That makes a ton of sense. And for me, that's helpful because obviously I have a couple of coaches under me. And so if I see them do something at practice and I wait until our coaches education meeting in a week, then let's say they have 2 or 3 more practices or trainings in between that time where they weren't able to make that adjustment because the feedback loop wasn't shortened and I wasn't, and people can't change unless, of course we want to ask questions, help them become more self-aware so they can change themselves. And it's our responsibility as leaders to give them feedback and help them improve faster.
Right. And so when we deal with organizations that are like, oh, well, this person's really been underperforming for so long, I first want to look at and say, okay, well, what's been taught, right? And there's a big distinction between teaching and telling. So just because you told them to do something doesn't mean you taught them how to do it. So have they been taught? How much feedback have they been given? How often have they been given that feedback? How many opportunities have they had to create that change? If you can't answer those questions for me, you've actually let them down as a leader, not them letting the team down.
Right. And then going back to our kind of conversation, it's your responsibility as the head coach, as the boss, to do that, right? It's
Correct.
your responsibility. It's no one else's. And you're talking about like the mindset of it, extreme ownership, right? You got to take responsibility for everything. And it's not for everyone. Not everyone may want all that responsibility, right?
When I'm dealing with leaders, right, and they're complaining about having to do this, I'm like, whoa, let's be clear. You signed up for this. You said you wanted to be a leader. You said you wanted to be a coach. This is, and I'm a huge Godfather fan, and we actually have the quote in our office. This is the business we chose. So if you don't like the business, you can get out of the business because this is not going to change. This is the expectation and the demand for what we have to do. I'm happy to send you back to being an individual contributor. I'm happy to find the role for you that's the best fit. But if you want to be a leader, you need to understand that this is the expectation that what a leader does.
Yeah, I got to remind myself of that all the time. I'm like, why am I dealing with this? And then,
You said you
it's
wanted to
kind
be
of
an
like
entrepreneur.
right. And like you're talking about, like we always, as humans, we're going to have those anxieties, those fears, right? And then we don't want to listen to ourselves. We want to make sure we talk and have a conversation with ourselves, right? So
Right.
whether it's, like for me, I do like to take my dog on walks. I journal as well. And we have to have, and it's constant dialogue. And I've been, like, it's not every day we're going to be perfect, right? And so
Mhm.
how can we continue to learn from it? Maybe it's a couple weeks that are as a rough patch, but like having this consistent mindset of like, how can we keep getting 1% better?
And so like that concept of, and that's what we've built our entire company around, is the idea of getting 1% better every day, is not that you're actually going to get 1% better every day. It's that you're willing to accept the challenge of getting 1% better every day. Because when you show up and when you put forth effort and when you do what's necessary and still fall short, and you do that 2, 3, 4, 5 days in a row, 4 weeks in a row, 8 weeks in a row, that is going to compound so high over time that you're not even going to think about, oh, I didn't actually get 1% better on that one day. Look at all the growth I've created by just showing up and committing to the challenge of trying to.
1,000%. And I feel like that's what really gets me through some of the tougher weeks or tougher times is I'll look back, okay, where were we a year ago? Oh my
Right.
goodness, we're so much further than we
Right.
were a year
Right.
ago. Whether it's in
Yep.
my relationship or in the business or just myself, I'm like, oh, you know,
Not
I
even
get it,
close. Right.
right now I'm not even close, right? And so I think sometimes it's kind of going back to you talked about like that comparison is it's the thief of joy, right? We end up
Yep.
comparing ourselves, and I feel like that's a byproduct of maybe scrolling too much and seeing people,
Oh,
like
there's no
social media
doubt.
is just people's highlights.
Yep. It's that comparison game, which comparison is the thief of all joy. So like, run your race. You know what I mean? And remember that like somebody else's success doesn't mean you can't have success. And
Right.
and like if you really have a growth mindset, then somebody else's success is actually a blueprint for how you can get there. So instead of watching it in envy, watch it as a student and say, what can I take from this and apply for myself and see if it fits for me? Like that's always something that as a ball coach I did, and even as a business owner now, I'm always looking at what other people are doing and saying, number one, do I like it? And if I like it, does it fit us? Is it something that we can adopt? Is it something that we can do? Is it something that's going to help us grow? And you might even try it. You might go, you know what? Yeah, I think it is. And you try and go, you know what? This actually isn't a fit. We're actually going out of our lane and we're losing focus on what we do well. And I'm actually going to scrap this, which most people are like, oh, that was a waste of time. No, it's not. You learned. Not only did you
Right.
try something, right, but you actually adopted it and did it and you learned that skill set and you found out that it wasn't for you, which only brings you closer to more of the things that are for you.
1,000%. And that it's so true. And I just feel like some of this wisdom, right? Obviously, it's been around for a long time. It's just we just have to take it and apply it every single day. And
And
it's
that's the
just
hard
that.
part, consistency.
That's the hard part.
Consistent consistency,
Consistency.
right? It's
100%.
not it's not complicated, but it's not easy, right? Just
Right.
because it's simple doesn't mean that it's
It's
easy.
easy. Yep.
Nothing worth getting. No part of life is easy. If you're
No.
trying to grow, if you're trying to continuously get 1% better every day, that is a challenge. That is hard, right? It's not complicated. It's very simple,
Right.
actually. It's just difficult. And if you don't
Right.
want it to be difficult, don't try to be good.
Yeah, exactly. Like there are times in my mind where I'm like, oh, this is so much easier. It just was on a beach in Hawaii and I was just surfing, and, or whatever. But
Yeah.
obviously, that's not the choice I want to make. And going back, we always are making choices. So
Amen.
um, for our as we wrap up this show, I'd love for you to share, your kind of final wisdom for the coaches, parents, and kids that are listening to this, and then where can people find your podcast and
Sure.
learn more about you and on the ball?
Appreciate that. So, I'd say final wisdom, right? If there's one thing that you can focus on, and it's been the key to all of my success in my life, it's relationships.
Yep.
So, cultivate really good relationships, whether it's with your teammates, whether it's with your coaches, your teachers, your mentors, your neighbors. You never know how people come back into your life, and relationships will always be the things that lead you to opportunities. I never got a job in college football because of how much I knew about football. It was always about who I knew. Same in business. Every deal that we've done, it's because of who we know and the relationship we have with those other businesses. So focus on relationships for your success. And you can find us on the ball at ontheball.co.co. You can find me on LinkedIn, which is my best place to be. But I'm also on Instagram at Coach Noodle. And you can find our podcast, The Daily Edge, on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast.
Cool. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Got a couple of pages of notes for myself. Always enjoy these conversations. Thanks for your time today, Marc.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beyond the Scoreboard podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and share it with a friend, coach, or parent you feel like would get value from this episode. It's our responsibility to impact as many parents and coaches who are the ones that are impacting our athletes. That's how we create a ripple effect. So thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to serving you all next week.